Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with another video on Native American flute making. This video is going to kind of focus on those of you who are using river cane or bamboo, or the couple of you I've talked to that use sawgrass to make your flutes. I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks that might help you out, things that I've learned along the way, and by all means, if you have any of your own, please feel free to post them at the bottom of the video. We always appreciate more information. It's one thing I hope you learn from flute making is not only a little bit of humility, but knowing that there's someone else that knows something you may not, and I know that too. There's a lot of those. But anyway, what I'm going to show you is working with those three different materials. They're natural. Two of them are indigenous. They grow relatively hollow in most cases. There's a lot of the three of them around the United States, all over the place, especially bamboo that's not originally from here. And you know, you can get it at a lot of your hobby stores and craft stores, but even those of you living in Utah, there's still bamboo growing out there. I promise you, if it's not in somebody's landscape, it may be around your corner where someone used to have a very landscaped yard, and it just took off and they moved. So at least that's the way we see it here in the South a lot. But anyway, we're going to take a look at these materials and some of the problems you might have with them and things you can do to help overcome those problems, and see what best way to treat them that I've learned over the last 28 or so years making flutes. Okay, so here's a few of our tools that we use. Real simple stuff that you can get just about anywhere. And then here are some pieces of bamboo, sawgrass, and river cane, respectively. Anyway, what we're going to look at first here is an old piece of bamboo. It is incredibly light, doesn't have a whole lot of structural stability, but it's a nice looking piece of material. It's not too bad. I mean, it's a little discolored here, which if you haven't learned yet, some steel wool will really make it shine. You can see this guy's got a little crack in it, so I may not use him anyway. But what you're going to get out of this piece, and what I want to show you, is the inside of it. If you notice, the node in here is kind of coming apart. Bugs, rot, I don't know what it was, but it's kind of coming apart. Not something I would want to use for flute making. Now, you could plug that and use it if you really had your heart set on it, as I'll show you in just a moment. But in the case of this particular piece, it's a little bit too old, and I think it's going to go in my burning pile. You can tell when you tap it with something, whether it be your finger or a piece of metal, that it has kind of a thump sound. It's not a very clear, crisp sound. So it's very soft, and the material inside is very soft. Matter of fact, I wanted to show you that you can push it, and it actually flexes. So this is not a piece that I really want to use for making flutes. So I'm going to set them over here aside and show you some that I do like. This guy has some algae on the outside of it. If any of you wondering what that green stuff growing on your deck out back is, or growing on some fence boards, that's algae. This algae and different kinds of, I don't know, fungus, mold, anything, this stuff's been outside. I mean, it grows outside, for crying out loud. This is actually a pretty good looking piece of bamboo, and like all bamboo, the links, these nodes as people in the business call it, are very close together. So you're going to have to find a way to knock those out. We talked about this in one of our last videos, and I'll show you in just a moment and why you would want to knock them out. But I want you to also see that the green here, this discoloration, you know, is just really on the surface. You can take it off like this, and look how shiny and pretty it is underneath. Wow, just amazing. And if you focus on one of these nodes here, you notice even this black discoloration here, some cases, will come off, and you wind up with something that looks like, hey, that's a beautiful looking flute there. So you got to clean the whole thing and really make best use of it. Or you can do as we do and use a torch bottle like this guy and just torch the whole thing, and once it lightly torches the whole piece, then you can scrape it off with the piece of steel wool, and that'll help you. Before you put any level of heat, or put it, you know, in another way, we're going to talk about using it in the oven here in a moment, but before you put any kind of heat surface on this, you want to make sure that you have open chambers. You don't want to knock it all the way through, and like we've talked before, I like to use aluminum arrow shafts. So I have like an arrow shaft here, and what we're going to do before I use this is we're going to knock one of these nodes out. So you choose your piece of material for the best look and best design that you can make with your flute. This one, I've actually got it upside down. I think I want to use this short piece as the mouthpiece and this long piece down here for the rest of my flute. Looks like it would just about make a key of G flute. It's a little restricted right here, but it's about 7/8 of an inch in diameter, which would be perfect. So what I'm going to do is knock this node out. I'm going to leave this node solid because this is the mouthpiece, and you need the air chamber with a partition, and the air will come out the hole and go across the track onto the other hole. And this area all needs to be hollow, so we're going to knock that out and then sand it out like in our last bamboo flute video, and we'll take care of that, and then we can torch it. You don't want to have a closed chamber while you're heating it up because it will explode. Sometimes it doesn't explode, but I've worked with bamboo my entire life. It will explode. So you don't want to do that. But one other thing we're going to discuss, like I said in just a moment, if this were green, and I say green, not green the color, but green fresh. If it was a fresh cut piece of bamboo, there's a way that we could treat it with both the torch and in conjunction with using an oven that will help to make it a good flute. Whereas as it is right now, this guy here is already prepared for that. It's ready to be used as making a nice flute out of. We don't have to torch it if we don't want to, and we don't have to put it in the oven. But we'll, like I say, talk about that in just a second. Here's another piece, and a real typical piece of bamboo. You've got links that are kind of close together. You've got links that are a little further apart, but there's still, you know, many of them in here. And once again, a good size piece for making a key of G flute, like we talked about in the last video. Again, you know, referring back to our bamboo flute making video. We've got a flat section right here and a flat section up here, and on the opposite side we have the flat section on the opposite links. So every other link has a flat section on the same side, and then every other link has a flat section on the opposite side. So I probably would make the flute with this side up, and there's some things you want to consider. You can see those with the camera very well. There's a nice crack in here that's already formed, and it even goes through the node right here. This piece of material is probably not one I would use. However, if I really, you know, just love this piece of bamboo and I thought, you know, this is the greatest thing, I should probably go ahead and make a flute out of it. Or if it's the only piece I had on hand, like for example, if you bought one from a craft or hobby store, 90% of those I have found have always been broken. You can search through them and see if you can find one. When you take it home, depending on the temperature and the humidity difference between the craft store and your home, it may break when it gets there. So be prepared. This video is going to help you learn what to do with it if it does break, how to prevent it from breaking, and, you know, further on. But you'll notice here's a crack. I have plenty of bamboo at my disposal. This one's probably going to go to firewood to fire clay whistles. It is a nice looking piece, and this side doesn't have any cracks. It's only on this side. It's got a long crack here, goes through the node, and you may not see it too well, but down here at the bottom it's got another crack. If I wanted to keep this piece, the first thing I would probably do is knock the links out that I don't need. I would make the mouthpiece up here. I would leave this node intact. I would cut this node out, probably with a drill, and I wanted you to see what the inside of a node looks like. This is a bamboo node. Nice flat section typically in the inside of a node. It's just been cut off right here with my saw, and this little node piece is about 1/8 or maybe 2 millimeters thick or so, somewhere in that ballpark. So we could knock through it and have a nice looking mouthpiece that we would sand off and make really cool looking, or we could cut it off right there and just do away with that piece and not worry about it. But in a lot of cases I like to leave these on here. They make a nice looking mouthpiece. So we would knock that link out, leave this link intact since it's going to be above, you know, the track area is going to be above it, and then we would knock this link and this link out, and you would have a big hollow chamber, one link and another hollow chamber. At that point, when there's no enclosed chambers, it's safe to put it in the oven. However, I always recommend, if not darkening it too much, if you just want to make it light color, lightly burn the outside of the flute. It'll take you with a torch like this probably a good 8 minutes or 10 minutes to do that. And then that's, once again, if it is going to be used, it has this crazy crack in it that, once again, I say I don't like, but if I wanted to use it, I'd go ahead and lightly torch it, and from that point of lightly torching it, go back and fill the crack with some super glue, maybe even put some clamps on it. You know, we have all sizes of clamps here in case we get a repair request or something of that nature. I would go back and do that, clamp it as best I can, probably put at least 2 clamps on this area, centering them on the largest parts of the crack, and let them sit there for maybe 30 minutes to an hour, and then this would be a usable piece of bamboo, if indeed we want to go that way. Here's a fine example of a piece. It's a large piece of bamboo. Now I've got other large bamboo, but I like the way this one looks, so I decided to keep it. This guy is maybe, I don't know, probably been cut down for 10 years. My dad cut it a while back. It's got cracks here, cracks there, and you see I've actually super glued all those cracks already because of what I'm going to do with it. The super glue is cyanacrylic glue, and it's very viscous. It's very thin, thinner than water, thinner than maybe even gasoline or alcohol, and it penetrates into the crack area. It looks like there's one I need to go back on. It penetrates into the crack area, and once it hardens, it's a permanent fix. Okay, so you've seen where I got this crack here glued, and if you notice, I haven't burnt this piece of bamboo. I'm not going to burn this one. I want to keep it light colored. And my future plans for this guy, it's going to be a extra low G like bass flute, and I'm going to leave these cracks in here. Some cases, especially in the case of a really nice, you hear that sound? Got a real good strong tone to it. In the cases of a piece of old bamboo like this that's got some very unique and beautiful shapes and structure to it, I want to keep it like it is. So I'm just going to go back, I'm going to sand these nodes down until they're smooth with the surface, and I'll sand the entire piece. I may lightly burn it at that point, which will bring out the color of the grain, and then it's going to be lacquered, so it will never move again, never have any more cracks or anything. If you were to glue this and then heat it with a torch, which gets, 600 degrees or so, if you were to heat it with a torch, the acrylic inside here, which is solidified, will release. It'll let go, and it will no longer be solid, as in the case I say that this stuff here is pretty permanent. So you don't want to heat it after you've superglued it. You want to heat it first and then superglue it, or just don't heat it. But once again, this is an old piece. It's been cut like 10 years. It's a really heavy piece of bamboo, and will make an amazing flute. I'm going to set him aside back in his little working spot. And next we're going to talk about sawgrass. Here are 3 pieces of sawgrass. This one is over a year old. This one we cut down just a couple of days ago here from our yard. And this one is maybe, I think it's been cut down for maybe about 3 months. I want to show you the color differences in what you get. Sawgrass has a very unique and old kind of color to it. Very beautiful patina that really looks like it's already an ancient flute. And this piece has, like any of them, the protective leaves that grow from the plant when it's growing in the infancy stage, I guess you would call it. These protect the plant, help keep a lot of the condensation and humidity inside of it needs to be able to grow 20 and 30 feet tall. So, like most bamboos do something like that. Sawgrass, not really so much. I'm sorry, sawgrass, yes. Bamboo, yes. River cane, not so much. River cane usually prefers the swampy area, so it doesn't require so much of this type of thing to make it keep the humidity inside. So typically the river cane will have some sheaths around it of this almost like leaf-like structure, maybe for the first couple of weeks, then they fall off and it's done, whereas a piece of bamboo can have them on there for years before it falls off. And same thing with sawgrass. So this guy is old. Let's see what it sounds like. A thunk. Sounds just like that piece of bamboo I was complaining about, except for this is sawgrass, which I know for a fact makes a beautiful sounding flute. So this one's going to be great. We'll wind up taking all this leaf material off of the outside of it, cutting that off, and just cleaning it up, cleaning this limb and this limb that we're growing on it. This will be the mouthpiece. Once again, we'll knock this node out here, and it'll be hollow. It's not really necessary to bake this piece because it's old already and cured out. So that's a good piece to make a flute out of. Just needs to be cleaned up, and once again, it might look like junk right now, but once it's cleaned up, most of these materials, just like if you go to the lumber store and find a piece of wood there, to a woodworker it's a diamond in the rough. To general people, they think, huh? You're going to make what out of that? But there's a beautiful piece of material for making a flute out of. That's just incredible. So we have an old piece. Here's a reasonably new piece. I can still feel by the weight of it that it has a little bit of the water weight left in it. We're probably going to lightly torch this guy. We've already peeled the shucks off of the outside of it, which you can see a kind of a design, because the sawgrass leaves those shucks on there for such a long period of time. You can see the design that was left behind from the shuck. Here would have been an open area. This would have been the shuck closed up to the body, just like a corn shuck. Same plant for all intents and purposes. It's just a giant grass. And you can scrub this guy and see it turns a really pretty color. But if you can notice, there's a slight tinge of green in here, just a small hint of it. This one has a little bit of green, but this one's a bright green. This is a kind of a darker colored, golden, lightly greened, I guess, golden color. But this light color green suggests to me that it's probably prepared for making flutes, and will make a wonderful flute. We'll not have any problems with it whatsoever if we didn't burn it, but we may burn it just a little bit just to get some of that going in the right direction. It's already prepared and ready to go. Turn into a flute. This is a fresh piece we cut, like I said, just a few days ago. Still has the shucks on it. Let's take these off. The shucks didn't leave a excellent design behind, but it was on its way. It's a little heavier because it's got a lot of water inside of it. This in here is where I just cut it from, and you can tell by looking at it that it's very moist. Many people use a moisture meter. I don't really have to have a moisture meter to tell that there's water inside of this thing. If I were going to use this piece right now today to make a flute, and I wanted to make sure that it would last and not shrivel on you, because it's a new piece, you have a tendency of them shriveling, which I'll show you with another good example in just a moment. This piece of sawgrass will shrivel up, and it will get kind of rigid in an unusual shape, and may even warp a little bit or distort. There's a way around that. Number one, knock the links out that you're not going to use. Like, this is going to be my mouthpiece. This is the body of the flute. I'm going to leave this link or node in place. I'm going to knock this one out and knock this one out, or cut it off depending on what size flute I need, but I'll knock it out initially. And then I'll use my sanding dowel that you've seen in my last video to sand the inside of it so it's nice and smooth. And from that point, I would take the torch. I probably would burn this thing almost black, and after that I would put this flute, as well as several others just like it, this flute blank, inside of a paper grocery bag, and I would wrap it up or seal it up, maybe even staple it shut if you can, and I would put it on the lowest setting in my oven, and my just regular conventional oven, put it on the lowest setting, and I would prop the door open slightly with like a metal utensil or something. So I would put it inside of the oven. Once again, all the nodes are open. We have one that's solid, but it's not going to create an explosion because there's no trapped gas inside of it. It's open over here, and it's open all the way through here at that point. We can put it in the oven, keeping in mind that your oven has several settings, has bake and broil and whatever else it may have. Broil is going to turn on the top fire or electric element, and bake will turn on either the bottom or the bottom on the top, depending on what kind of oven you've got. And you don't want a paper bag to catch fire in your oven. It's a bad idea. So make sure that the paper is away from the heating elements that are going to get hot. If there's any questions, stand there by it. Once again, I don't recommend leaving the thing with a paper bag in there either. But this is a system that a lot of people use for purifying everything from diapers to clothing, if you're in the medical field, to soil, or if you're a botanist, to whatever. So there's a lot of different applications of putting a paper bag in the oven that you'll find. Make sure you study it or read about it before you do it, just on my suggestion, because you need to know what you're in for. I don't think I've ever caught one on fire, but I've gotten really close to it before. So anyway, this will be inside of a paper bag with several of its brothers and sisters, and they'll be in the oven like at maybe 150, 200 degrees for about between 30 minutes and an hour. An hour is probably best. And what this does is the heat drives the moisture out of the sawgrass or river cane or even bamboo. As long as you've prepared it properly, where it has the open chambers on both ends and just the one link's in the middle here, it will push all the moisture out of it. And after you let it cool off for maybe another hour or two, after you take it out of the oven, it will be perfect for making a flute. It's set. It's ready to go. The only reason I don't like to put it in there green rather than torching it first is because putting it in there green, it's got the idea that the vapors can still leak out of the sides of it, out of the sides of this material. When I torch it, the torch bottle the fire causes this part here to solidify and caramelize a little bit, which seals it. And the reason I like to do this is because when the piece of bamboo or river cane or sawgrass is in an oven, the liquid wants to push out of the end, because there are little pathways inside of here, and the fibers of the material causes it to push the vapor out, which I find to be more efficient, and certainly does a pretty good job anyway, rather than letting it push out through these pores, which it may or may not get all of the moisture at that point. So that's a very green piece that we may work with, or you can do like I probably will do with this guy, since I'm not in a hurry, is you can just let it cure out over time. Usually 3 months is a good time period. If you cut this guy really green, it may warp anyway. You need to learn. We've had one video we discussed about the different greennesses of material to use. But now we move on to river cane. A couple of you I've talked to have river cane at your disposal. And if you notice, I'm looking up here at the top of this piece to see if there are any cracks. There are no cracks on this one, which is amazing and great, because it feels like it's kind of on the way to the drying process. It's on the way towards the end of its life cycle. So it's perfect. This guy right here is excellent for making a flute. Looks kind of ugly right now, but once I clean it up, just like the sawgrass, this is going to be an amazing looking and sounding flute. We'll probably take it to an art show with us. But it's a really beautiful piece of material. This is maybe where my hacksaw or maybe my machete had scratched it, or maybe it bumped around inside of the cane field before I cut it. But this piece here, I wouldn't worry about it. It looks kind of cool like it is. It gives it that little bit of a wabi or a Persian flaw that people really do treasure in a lot of different art pieces. But the color and texture of this guy, nice and smooth. You can see that it's got some interesting grays and light colors in it and browns in it. This is going to make an excellent flute. One thing you want to consider, though, is that river cane, unlike bamboo, which has a paper inside of it, river cane has these tiny little microfibers inside of it. You can see they pour out like sawdust. It is not sawdust. This is the fiber of the river cane itself, and I'm just going to poke my little sink snake in here and kind of go back and forth a little bit. If you notice, well, look at all that stuff. Quite a bit of it come out. So this is something that you want to consider when you're making a flute out of this stuff, is make sure that it's nice and clean and smooth on the inside. We've taken several videos and made pictures of the insides of flutes, so I won't do it with this one so much. Besides, it's easier to see when there are holes drilled in it because it allows some light to come through. But this piece of river cane has a nice tone to it. It's going to make a wonderful flute. I do want to show you what to do to prevent it from cracking. There are a couple of key places where the cane will crack. Let me see. Here's another good one, pretty much just the same. Here's one that has a crack in it already that has formed. Let me show you where that's at. It is right, not this black line, if you can see that black line there, it's this tiny little black line here. That crack there is not ever going to be a problem. What I'm going to do is go ahead and drop some super glue on it and let them sit there until the glue is dry. And once it does that, you're set. Feel free to work with it, make a flute out of it, whatever you need to do, and it's going to be great. A lot of you are concerned with your river cane cracking, and you should be. The cane cracking is one of the minor flaws of using this material to make flutes with. And I guess out of the last, let me see, I'm going to ask my wife, about the last, 3,000 river cane flutes we've made, we've had maybe 5 of them that cracked. Does that sound about right? Just a guess. Here's one right here. Beautiful flute. Oh my goodness gracious. An excellent flute. This ugly, nasty crack. And if you notice, it starts right here, and it goes up through the air chamber, the sound area here, and it's also inside of the track as well. So the crack has gone through the node and cracked it as well. And if it wants to, it'll continue right on up the side. It'll go down. One place when I first started making flutes, we seen them crack a great deal was in between the fingerings. These days that's kind of a rare thing to happen. It still can happen, but the burning technique helps it. The reason burning these holes out helps that is because it singes and cauterizes the inside, so no vapor, no moisture can escape out of it. If you stop the moisture from escaping from the flute, then typically you don't get any cracks. And the way that we normally do this is we use our super glue and we glue this area here that we sanded, because that's one big open air escape for the moisture vapor inside of this river cane. This piece of river cane didn't have a lot of moisture vapor to start with because it was already cured out. And this piece has been cut for a while, and I cut it when it was dead. I don't normally like to cut live green river cane or anything unless I need it for a specific purpose, or in the case it may be in the way and we're just doing some cleaning up around our patch here. But I like to use the older dead already river cane, but it's not too dead. You notice the little color difference. This is out of the same patch, the same field. This guy here, for all intents and purposes, is just like this one. So what we like to do sometimes is kind of lightly torch the outside of the flute, especially this area around the node. Before you even make the track or the sound area, it's best to torch this right here. That will prevent this guy from ever happening. The super glue on top usually 99% of the time prevents it from happening. And then one other major thing is our bear fat, or if you've learned how to make your own at this point. If you haven't, we have videos on that, which is great. And for those of you concerned about whether or not I'm still selling it on our website, it's still selling strong, so no problem there. But you know, personally, it's cheaper to buy it from us than it is to go buy the store and make your own, unless you're making a lot of it. But so you want to smear that bear fat here on the track area, anywhere that has breached the surface of the flute. If you've sanded this, you've breached the surface. If you've just sanded it lightly, you have. But you smear that bear fat up here around the mouthpiece, once again using natural materials, natural oils, and you do the same thing down here. Anywhere that there are open air pores for this thing to leak out its moisture. Leaking out the moisture is not a problem. It's going to do that over the years. I've got river cane flutes that are 20 and older, 20 years old and older, that have no problems like that, because I've oiled them and I've waxed them regularly. Regularly usually is once every month in the beginning, and then eventually once every 4 or 5 months later on, and then maybe once a year after the flute's, say, maybe a year and a half, 2 years old. None of that's written in stone. Do it as you like, and you'll be happy with your outcome. But anyway, so this guy here, I want to show you what we're going to do to him. I've got one that we've already done this with, and we're just going to take these clamps. Probably won't even need these black ones. These are a larger clamp than my little orange one. And I've got a yellow one that's even bigger than that. Always use the right tool for the right project. This guy had a crack. Let's see. I'm speaking German this morning. He had a crack right here that kind of developed, and I wanted to keep it. And if you notice, the crack's really hard to see. It's almost impossible to see. And what I'm going to do now is go back and kind of lightly sand it off, finish it really nice, probably lacquer it. I like to use oil-based Rust-Oleum lacquer is really the stuff I like to work with. I'm going to go back and lacquer it, and it will never crack again because it won't leak those vital moistures out. So beautiful piece of river cane, had a huge crack from here to there, caught it in its beginning stages, and decided to use it. And like I said, this one will go to an art show with us. We usually don't like to send out pieces of ever cracked over the web, because a lot of times people will buy our flutes that live in Russia, and they have this crazy temperature change, and you know, it's already been cracked once. So just for the sake of argument, I like to do that. So what I'm going to do, lots of different ways to do this. I don't know if I can ever stress that enough. I'm going to put just a little bit down inside of this area. This is a repair job now. Once again, a beautiful flute. It'll be even more beautiful when I'm done with it. And it's going to have a permanent fix, not something that's temporary. This guy here is going to last forever after this. You use the right size clamp for the job. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and put this clamp over the apex of the thicker, I guess the more deep, or what would you say? I don't know how to say that. most elaborate part of the crack. Oops, sounds like I'm starting to crack it again. May have created a new one in the process. Let's open it up a little bit, go down, and just close them up right here. Do as much as you can. You don't have to close it all the way to remake a beautiful flute out of it. If you notice in the process of clamping it that there's some places that need more glue or need less glue, you know, like this, I probably should wipe off with a towel, shop towel here in just a second. I'm going to put some on the inside as well. Let's see. Since super glue is relatively translucent, it typically takes on the color or shape of whatever that you adhese it to. I think I might go ahead and use one of these black ones too. And typically after you sand it lightly, you won't even see the crack, which is amazing. But this is how you treat something that you just really love, like this one particular flute here I really like and don't want to lose it. If you want to preserve and protect it for all time. So, they always say the more the merrier, right? I was thinking I was just going to use the one, but this particular piece is so tense. The piece of river cane is so tense that it needs multiple clamps. And if you notice, hey, look at that. I just closed it up with this last one. Close that little area up. I think you can see in there. Wipe that off. Wipe this off. So a lot of you are thinking, why would you even do that? Why don't you just throw it away? Well, this was an excellent flute, really was, and I feel kind of bad that anything happened to it because it's, like I say, such a nice flute. It's not one of my own personal flutes, it's just one I like a lot. I have a lot of admiration for it, so I decided to fix it. I'm going to fix it permanently. After I fix it permanently, I'm going to spend more time on this flute than I have spent on one that, you know, doesn't have a crack or doesn't have any problem and won't ever have a problem. So it will actually be a more valuable flute than these other guys are because I'm going to do more to it, not only to make sure that it never cracks again, but also to be certain that it looks and plays to a level I consider to be worthwhile and make it good. In some cases you might find even these little squeezy clamps come in handy to help keep the cracks together. This particular piece was so tense that the squeeze clamp wouldn't help me, and I really needed to use these hose clamps. I like the hose clamps with the little butterfly wings on them. They're super handy. I get them from automotive stores. I don't think your regular hardware stores carry it. Some of them may. You may get them in the plumbing section too in some hardware stores. But I'll let this guy dry. I'm going to go back in and treat it really well. Like I said, I'm going to sand this off real lightly on the outside, and that's going to be an amazing flute. So, back to green. Well, a lot of you think, well, this is almost the same color. That's not green, right? This is a piece of variegated river cane. From the time that we cut it, you can see where the moisture's escaped. It's already shrunk and started to shrivel. That shriveling process is pretty destructive on the flute. You don't want to cut river cane green and use it for making flutes if you can avoid it. That's why I like to use the stuff that's dead already. This piece here was very unique looking with that nice green candy stripe. I've got several pieces of it that I've cut over the years and used because it's kind of nice to see a variegated piece of river cane. It's not common. I've never seen variegated bamboo that wasn't made to be that way, that grew naturally. This stuff here is growing naturally like this. So what I would recommend doing is, number one, don't use it. Number two, if you absolutely must, if you find something you like so much that you want to keep it, then I would suggest cutting it, leaving the links intact, and letting it cure off in a distance, you know, some hidden part of your shop or garage or wherever you have a place to keep it, that's not going to be too wet, not too dry, not too hot, not too cold, preferably in the shade out of the sunlight. And after maybe 6 to 9 months, this piece here may be usable. So that's something to consider. This guy here, just cut for a demonstration, going to go in my burning pit. And here is, actually I kept the rest of it so I didn't waste this guy. Here's a real green piece of river cane. You can see up here once again where it was cut. It split a little bit on the ends, and these splits are allowing the moisture to escape, and it is shriveling. what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and cut it down past its shrivel right here, which will make an excellent mouthpiece size for the flute. The rest of it is not shriveling. I'm going to take some of my bear fat or just some beeswax, and I'm going to seal this end of the mouthpiece area here so that it won't let any more moisture out. Professional woodworkers actually have wood that's already sealed in wax, so those of you that don't know about it, wax keeps the moistures from escaping. And in our case, we want the moistures to escape because that's how this piece is going to cure out, but we don't want them to escape quickly out of the end where they have these large open pores to breathe. So you cut this off right here, and then we're going to seal it with some wax, just very lightly around the ends, and we're going to seal this in with some wax on the bottom end of it here, and let it cure out for a little while longer. I could go back and torch this piece. After torching it, not enough water has escaped, so I'm still going to want to go back and put it in the oven, like inside of a paper bag. The paper bag helps keep the moisture a little more controlled and more consistent. It's like a greenhouse basically inside of there, and allows it to escape more slowly and gradually rather than just putting a piece of river cane in the oven. So I'll probably do that with this one and make a nice flute out of it. Looks like it's going to be a beautiful piece. If you were to cut these green, like one of my friends cuts a lot of green bamboo for flute blanks, if you cut this green, you can let it dry out. He even cuts it into flute blanks, doesn't wax it, puts it inside of a controlled area, controlled environment, and lets it cure. It takes him about 3 to 6 months and it's ready. He has a nice drying area for it, and it works. His system is a little different than mine, but it works perfect. So keep in mind, there's always experimentation and always a lot of different ways you can do these things. Don't think that my way is the only way. I hope that when I show you guys these videos, what I'm doing is inspiring you maybe to go out and do your own system, your own method, learn about it. That's how we're going to advance in this particular field. Eventually, a lot of you, as many flute makers have, probably going to get tired of making Native American flutes. I hope not. I hope you always enjoy playing them. I know I do. I mean, it's been 28 years and I haven't stopped yet. A lot of the flute makers that are out there already make flutes in these exotic keys and different types of scales that they perform. You know, a lot of them have like the Arabic keys that they're making their flutes in. This has been going on for a long time. Since people have been making flutes, they've always experimented. Myself, I like to try to stand the test of time, and in every science experiment there's always a control, and that's where I'm at. So don't feel like you can't go and try some different things. I'm doing my way because I know it works, and I know a lot of these methods I use are tried and true and traditional. So, you know, like I say, please don't think that this is the only thing you can do, especially if you don't have ties to Native American history or anything like that. You want to go out and make some exotic flute that uses a covered mouthpiece like our flutes do, that you know, has 3 chambers and it plays you know, a diatonic scale and a pentatonic scale and some other type of scale. I mean, just go for it. You know, it's up to you. But once again, like I say, I like to keep with the tried and true method. So, like Jesse and I, my wife, were talking, you know, we should probably make an About Me video. We have some About Me information and bios floating all over the web. Lots of different organizations and companies know me to one level or another, and I think one of our next videos is going to be a little bit of history about myself and my family and where I come from and what I do. A lot of you asked questions that are kind of important, and I want to make sure I give you good answers for them. So, having said that, I hope you enjoy our videos and find some use in them. And if you have any questions, you feel free to send us a message through our website, bluebearflutes.com. I think I heard one chime in just now. And a little joke there, but somebody did send us an email. But the website's there for you to contact us. You can contact us through Facebook, which is available there for you also. It's Blue Bear Arts. I think we still have that Facebook where you can like us and find groups that we have, and maybe even find other ways to contact us through there. I have Twitter, which is Blue Bear Flutes, and of course our website, the YouTube channel. I mean, gosh, if you can't find a way to contact me, just Google Blue Bear Flutes or Google Charlie Mato-Toyela. I'm sure you'll find us. But in any case, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and happy flute making and flute playing. You guys take care.